Good evening, everyone. My name is Terry Wright. I'm here to do the prayer here. So if y'all don't mind, would you please just bow your hearts down and let's go into prayer. Lord, we just thank you for your mercy and your kindness. We thank you for your peace. We thank you for your traveling grace. Allow us to get here. We thank you for the blood upon us. Lord, we thank you for the organization. We give you the praise and the glory. Everyone that took hand in making this possible, we ask you to give them a special blessings, Lord. And we thank you and we give you the praise and the glory. Amen.
I tell you one thing, if I were not a married woman, he would be my type. So welcome and welcome again. I thank God for each and every one of you because you actually took your time to come out today to celebrate not just any event, but what would have been the 100th birthday of documented original Tuskegee Airman, Dr. Milton P. Crenchaw, as well as the 10th anniversary of the Milton P. Crenchaw Aviation Training Academy, which I am so honored to serve as president and board chair. Now, you're probably wondering, why do I really care so much about the organization and Mr. Crenchaw? I let you in on a secret. I was born in Tuskegee, and we grew up with the Tuskegee Airmen, but it's something more intimate than that. Mr. Crenchaw just used to come up to me and just kiss me right on my lips. And then he would look at me and say, "Do I know you?" I'm like, "Well, you know me now." And then he would look at my husband, "Is this your wife?" It's too late, Mr. Crenchaw. But one thing I thought about, if we are celebrating the 100th birthday, what would have been, of Dr. Crenchaw, and the 10th anniversary of our esteemed organization, then that tells me we're only a 10th of the way there as an organization. And we have so much more to go to fly to our destination. However, I am encouraged because as I look around, I see the Crenchaw family members. Will you please stand and remain standing? I see our esteemed MPCATA board members. Will you please stand and remain standing? I see our well-regarded MPCATA Advisory Council. Would you stand, please? I see our prestige MC, speakers, visitors, and guests. Would you please stand? And I see all of our well-respected community leaders, advocates, and supporters. Will you please stand? And anybody else that believes in the mission of MPCATA and helping young people to pursue careers in aviation and aeronautics, would you please stand? And I was going to tell you, give yourself a hand for being here tonight. And anybody else that's sitting, if you're ready to eat, then you just continue to sit. So without further ado, let the show begin. Again, I welcome you with all my heart as I present to you our beautiful, talented, and articulate MC tonight, no other than the one and only Pamela Smith, who's also the Communications Director of the Little Rock School District. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here to have a wonderful time as we celebrate the legacy of the late, great Dr. Milton P. Crenchaw. The night is going to get better and better, and we trust that you come to help celebrate, but also to help raise money, because this is a fundraising opportunity to support, as you've already heard, the dreams and aspirations of young people who want to pursue aviation. What an incredible legacy we are celebrating tonight, a decade of service by way of helping young people, providing them wings for dreams, as you saw in the video, but also celebrating a man who worked to make a significant difference in the lives of these young people, and specifically in the local community. And I was marveling at some of the video, because you think about young people and their exposure to flight and to aeronautics, aviation, and it would probably be very, very limited. But as you can see, Dr. Crenchaw wanted to have a significant impact, and he definitely left an imprint, as you could tell from the wonderful photos. And I'm most especially grateful because many of the young people that we saw in the video were Little Rock School District students. So I have a special place in my heart, and I had the opportunity to visit with Dr. Crenchaw when I did radio, and he would often come and appear on the radio station with us, and he always left us with inspiration. And so tonight, that is what we are celebrating. And we are going to ask you to enjoy your dinner, and then we will continue with our evening of inspiration after dinner is served. Thank you very much. He was born in Little Rock and raised here, as a matter of fact, and he wanted to be a pilot ever since the age of 3. He knew that he would one day become a commercial pilot at some point. And isn't that inspirational and aspirational to hear from a 3-year-old that they already know what they want to be? He had to overcome a lot of obstacles, though, to get to where he believed he was destined. While working on his pilot's license, he was involved in a horrific motorcycle accident, and it resulted in him having to have one of his feet amputated 2 weeks after that accident. But he did not become bitter, he became better. Since his accident, he's become a runner, running in one of the highest platforms, running and completing the Boston Marathon in 2014. That's right, that's worth applauding. 2 other marathons, and being able to go to compete at the Olympic trials for the 100 and 200 meter dash in 2016. So he's fast, y'all. He's currently one of the few pilots to hold a commercial license and an air transport license while also being an amputee. He mentors underprivileged youth, and he also mentors people with disabilities who want to become athletes. I cannot think of a better and more inspirational story to help us start this evening. Please welcome Mr. Andre Slay.
Thank you for being here. This is really, really a surreal moment for me, because it was probably 6 or 7 years ago. We were sitting around, and I was telling them how I was going to complete and go through this process. We didn't know how long it was going to take, but we knew it was going to happen. And it definitely took a village. Like I always say that, but it took a village. My mom's in the house right now, and I mean, she's the reason why I'm here. What makes this moment surreal is because, you know, one of my childhood idols, Lou Freeman, is here. When I was a kid, so my mom worked for Southwest Airlines as a reservation person. This was a reservation base for Southwest. And so, of course, I wanted to be a pilot. And that's anytime me and my mom would fly, or they would send me off to California to see family, I would always go in the cockpit and say, oh, man, I want to fly. I can't wait. I want to fly one day. And they all say, you got to meet Lou Freeman. Lou Freeman's a chief pilot. I mean, he's a legend. So there's a few people in here that inspire me in here. So it comes down to Milton P. Crenchaw. Milton P. Crenchaw is a trendsetter, right? And so, you know, obviously, I want to I don't put myself in that, but to be one of the first is like a big deal, because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen. You just kind of go off your gut. You go off prayer, and you just keep pushing. And that's kind of like how I went through my situation. So it's that. It's another guy named Rod Russ in here. black pilot, fly 767s, and I would see Rod Russ all the time traveling, getting ready for his trips. And he'd keep asking me about updates. So even when nothing was happening, he'll keep asking me. And he was like, dude, what you down about? You still pushing, keep pushing. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is how important, I know we're talking about, getting these things from the auction and how important money is, right? And it is, because for me, it took me 10 years to go through this process with the motorcycle wreck, of course, but it took a long time because we didn't have the finances. We were pulling out loans. At the time, the colleges were only giving out so much money, like $2,000 and $3,000. And those of you that are flying from the private and the general aviation field, you can use $3,000 in 3 days when it comes to flying, because it's $150 to rent the airplane. You still have to pay your instructor another $50. That's just 1 hour of flight time. You need 40 hours of flight time just to get your license. So it adds up real quick. And so, not to throw another guy that's dear to me, and he reminds me of myself, a guy named William. He teaches aviation at one of the schools. But I know him. I know that he wants to really fly. I know that's his passion. Like, that's always been my dream, but he's always been humble about it. Every time he sees me going through this process, he's like, hey, keep flying for me, dog. Keep flying. And I'm like, yo, that's my inspiration that keeps pushing me, because, there's, in my aviation class when I was at Henderson State, there was maybe 8 black aviation majors out of 100. And I'm the 4th to make it through. The other 3 are already flying, but it's so many reasons, even beyond the motorcycle wreck, even talking about finances, that I wouldn't be here in front of you. So that's why this stuff is important, because, you help one of these kids get their jump start and helping them get their private, even a pair of headsets or whatever it takes to get them started, keeps them motivated, and maybe they'll find their way on that. It's not an easy transition. Peyton will tell you, I'll tell you, Will will tell you, it's not an easy road. And so that's why, obviously these things are important. So enough about that. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. And so, of course, my name, Andre Slay. And, I grew up probably half a mile away off of Arch Street. My mother's single parent raising me. And, she knew from when I was a kid I wanted to fly airplanes. Well, for my 11th birthday, she surprised me with what you call an intro flight. She paid, at the time, it was probably $80, and I got to do an hour flight time in a Cessna. And that's what, these things are the foundation that we need. My mom did everything she could just to keep me motivated. We couldn't afford it, but she just kept me motivated. Any type of toys, birthdays, anything was all airplane related, and she never let me forget. So anyway, I eventually went to high school at Central High School, and I came from private school. So I was at that stage where I was kind of hard-headed, and, my mom had to get on me a couple times, and my grades dipped, and they dipped really bad, like 1.8 GPA, graduation bad. So if you saw that on paper, you'll say, man, I don't know about this kid. What, this kid's going to fly airplanes? He's going to be lucky enough to even be near one. Like, no one would believe that, right? So my mother, I'll never forget, my mom said, I don't know what you're going to do about this flying plane stuff, but we're going to get you 1 semester at Pulaski Tech. We'll see how you'll do. And then if not, you're going to the military. So I eventually went to a school, Henderson State University. And me and Will, like I said, we're just alike. We, all the banks would only give us $5,000 a semester. We were running through it in 2 months. And I'm sure Lou Freeman, everyone else will know that with aviation, it's not just paying out and flying. It's a self-paced program. But you can, if you don't use it, you lose it. It's just like a foreign language. Like, if you don't fly for 2 months, you're not the same pilot that you were when you started. And so now you have to, again, they say, all right, well, you don't know lesson 10. We need to go back to lesson 4 to catch you back up to 10. So now you've just used the money that you thought to progress forward just to review, and you're back in that situation. It's rough. So I'll give you some numbers real quick about United. I fly the regional aircraft, the Embraer 145. United Airlines has 13,000 pilots. 650 of them are black. 18 of them are black female. Those numbers were less than 1%. And, often I have communications with my friends and we're trying to figure out why, but these are some of the reasons. I mean, some of it is because we're not telling our kids we can be pilots. That used to go on. Like, even when I was a kid, I remember telling one of my neighbors, I was like, I want to be a pilot when I grow up. He's like, you'll never do that. That's for white people. Finally, I talked my granddad into helping me get some money to get my license. I said, Dad, I promise I'm going to get this license and I'm going to pay you back. And so everything's going smooth. And so I think I was 2 weeks away from getting my pilot's license. I had bought a motorcycle. I was also working for Continental as a ramper. So I was living the dream, and then I got in a bad motorcycle accident. So I didn't lose consciousness. I remember being out there on the pavement, and I thought these were my last moments. Like, I never saw so much blood in my life. And, Little Rock's so small that even the ambulance person that picked me up, I graduated from high school with. So she's like, Andre, is that you? I'm like, yeah, it's me. Okay, we're going to try to get you to the hospital. I was like, okay, cool. They're going to sew this up? He was like, this is pretty bad right now, but we'll talk about it later. So they get me to the hospital. I think I meet my mom there. My mom had this stoic look like, what did you do now? I was that kid. And, I had emergency surgery, and the doctor came out, and the doctor said, we're trying to save your foot. It doesn't look like we're going to save it. So, I was praying, hoping. I was like, everything's going to come out fine. But days and days later, I realized that my foot was in bad shape. And, to have to make that decision to become an amputee, my life changed forever. My doctor told me, the day before I asked him, I said, "Well, I still fly airplanes." He said, "I've never heard of a pilot with one foot before." Fast forward full circle to 2012, I was a gate agent for Delta, and he was flying out on vacation. I said, "Dr. Barnett, you remember me?" He was like, "Yeah, you lost your foot in a bike wreck." I was like, "Yeah, you amputated me. You didn't take me out to dinner or nothing. You just cut my foot off." And I said, "I got that license you're talking about." And he just kind of looked at me. I was like, and I wasn't mean about it. I was like, "I got that license. You didn't think I could do it, but, now you know somebody." And so anyway, I went through that process. So I had some good friends in my corner. They looked on the internet. We had internet then by that time, so I know y'all are wondering about that. And they finally told me that, hey, there's a way. This guy had a internet website, and it told people about who were amputees how to go through the process to get your license. So I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Men of Honor with Cuba Gooding Jr., but it was just like that. Found out I had the information. A month after I was walking, I was demonstrating that I could fly the aircraft while being an amputee. The guy who signed me off was like, "I couldn't even tell when you walked in that you were missing a foot, and I can't even tell the way you fly that you're missing a foot." I don't know what's going on. But so anyway, I had to end up finding out, well, what I was going to do then. So now I knew I was qualified, but how was I going to find the funding? So until then, I started working at Delta, of course, and a guy by the name of Jeffrey Glassbrenner, who was an amputee, he flew out all the time, and he's the one that gave me the information about running. He ran the Boston Marathon the year before. It was, and I communicated with him. I said, "Hey, what happened?" And he's like, "Well, I couldn't finish because of the bombings. Would you run it with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, there's 3 miles, right? That's all it is 3 miles, right?" He's like, "No, it's like 26.2. I was like, yeah, I don't know." And so he said, "Well, would you do it for the right reasons? Would you do it to show others to motivate other people?" And that's what pulled my heartstrings. And I said I would. But I said, I can't afford the foot. And the foot for me to run a marathon is $20,000. Yeah, and I called his bluff. I said, "Yeah, you find a foot for me, I'll go run the Boston Marathon," because I didn't believe him. Well, 3 weeks later, he was like, "Hey, I got your foot," and I'm like. So he tells me that 3 weeks later. Then he says, "Oh, by the way, Boston Marathon's the highest marathon that you can get to. So you can't just pay your way in. You have to go and you have to get qualified to run it." What's that mean? He was like, "Yeah, you need to run a marathon this year, and your time needs to make the times in order to make it." So I was like, now I got to run a marathon before I need to run one? So I ended up going to Colorado Springs in Elevation because that was the last marathon left before the year. I ran the American Discovery Trail Marathon. Was very hurt in that marathon. And I finished that marathon in 6 hours and 30 minutes. I was in a lot of pain. But somehow my numbers got me in. And I trained, got better, and I ended up running Boston Marathon the following year. And so me and my mother works for the state, and she says, hey, you know, I found this program for people with disabilities to help you go through school, but I don't know if you qualify or not. And so I ended up coming to them. I told them my story. I said, well, you have in your fine print that you help people with disabilities. I'm disabled. I was like, you said they have to have the grades. I said, I got a 2.8. I qualify. You said 2.5. I have a 2.8. I said, so how about I continue paying for school if you're willing to help me fly? And they was like, well, we never had anyone like that. Well, it took them 2 years, but the process went through, and they helped me get the rest of my ratings. So it happened. That dream, you know, that all the doubt, a lot of issues that happened. And, you know, those of you that are cadets in the room, I just tell you this story because I didn't quit. I was, again, from when I was a kid to going through high school to, you know, being told no. I couldn't go to the Air Force because I didn't have 20/20 vision. I wear contacts. It was so many no's along the road. But again, it took a village. It took people that cared about me to tell me just to keep pushing. It took Rod coming through and saying, hey, man, you got it. Here's another book for you to read. Stay motivated until you start flying. And, you know, to give him a call and to call so many other people to tell them that I passed my test, to tell them that I'm a commercial pilot meant the world to me. So if you don't get anything else from this speech, know that doesn't matter what your age is, whatever you want in life, just keep pushing, keep praying, keep yourself around the right people. I know it's going to be, Peyton, I know you're going to go through so many times that you're going to be like, man, what did I sign up for? Like, I was flying in the clouds on instruments with my instructor, and I was so exhausted I could not read the gauges. I was disoriented, and it scared me so bad that I thought about stop flying. I lost people. I had a best friend of mine that was on his first commercial flight, and he had an engine malfunction, and he lost his life. His mother told me at his funeral, you better keep flying. And I almost quit again. So it took so many different people. But I'm telling you, stay the course. It's lovely up here. I get the best views in the world. The last thing I'll tell you is just pay it forward. Just pay it forward. That's Milton P. Crenchaw. I remember talking to him, and I was supposed to take him flying, but he was always like, you didn't take me flying, but it's okay. You know, but we always get to talk. I mean, I love that guy. Once again, Lou Freeman, thank you for your service. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. You were a trendsetter. You know, Milton P. Crenchaw was a trendsetter. I'm your first black amputee. I'm a trendsetter, you know. So I feel like I can kind of fit up there a little bit, you know. So again, and again, those of you that are in the aviation field, thank you all for your service. I see a few recognizable faces in here, white and black. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. I hope this story you can just push it to someone else when this kid is thinking about quitting. Regardless if he's a pilot, he wants to be a mechanic, if he wants to be an artist, tell him to keep pushing. Like, you know, it's so much worth it when you have to work for it. And I worked for it, and it's so good in the end. So thank you so much.
She is Colonel Erica L. Johnson Ingram. She was born in Wilmer, and that's in Arkansas, in case you didn't know. She's a 1990 graduate of Wilmer High School, and she graduated from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff in May of 1995. I bet there are a few UAPB people in the room tonight. She completed the 4-year Army ROTC scholarship program there. Colonel Ingram currently serves as Arkansas's Army National Guard Deputy Chief of Staff Personnel. It's pretty heavy. Her awards and decorations are many. Meritorious Service Medal with 8 oak leaf clusters, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Army Commendation Medal with 1 oak leaf cluster, Army Achievement Medal, to name a few. She is a life member of the National Guard Association of Arkansas and the National Guard Association of the United States, and the former National Guard of Arkansas president. She's also a Greater Leadership of Little Rock program alum. In addition, she serves as a Big Sister within the Big Brothers Big Sisters program of Central Arkansas. She's had the honor and privilege to serve as the first African-American female Arkansas National Guard Battalion Commander 2014, the National Guard Association of Arkansas President from 2014 to 2015, and most currently, the first African-American female colonel in the Arkansas National Guard's 215-year history, ladies and gentlemen. She resides in Little Rock with her 2 daughters, Dee Dee Ingram Hutchins and Desiree, and she is a powerhouse, ladies and gentlemen. Would you please give a very warm round of applause to Colonel Erica L. Johnson Ingram.
My speech is a little different. Not a pilot, just a military person that didn't even start out to be a military person, was not in my plan at all. I tried to quit 3 times, as a matter of fact, and God kept showing me different. As I began contemplating my speech tonight, I thought about my NAACP, and when I looked at their mission in 1909, when they were founded, which was 110 years ago, it was to secure the political, educational, social, and economical equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons. With the mission of hope to one day achieve a society in which all individuals have equal rights without discrimination based on race. If additional references to gender were added, I really think it would almost sum up the mission of most these type organizations as yours, the NAACP, the Federal Employed Women. There are people in our society today who seem to doubt the need for organizations of this type, or highlighting the historic first as such as mine, or even sometimes the annual cultural celebrations. I'd submit to you that while we've come a long way in equality, we still have a way to go, and history will repeat itself if we don't teach our youngsters of what they have that generations before them, like Mr. Crenchaw, fought for opportunities that they didn't have, they fought for them, and now sometimes we so take them for granted. There are numerous studies that have been done and noted that people don't undertake activities or careers that they don't believe they can be successful at. These studies tend to highlight the power of perception. So I think it's safe to say it's a valid conclusion that one's perception of their ability or limited ability to succeed can be a factor in their path to success. I come from a small Arkansas town, a population of 1,500 at its best, currently 700 or less. I was just blessed to be raised in an environment with parents who taught me and encouraged me that I could do anything that I wanted to and achieve all bounds by tenacity and hard work. But as I grew older, I began to understand that not particularly everyone else had those same opportunities or had that village encouraging them. I work for an organization, the Arkansas Army National Guard, that has existed for over 200 years. And I just happen to have the distinct honor of having 3 historic African-American female positions. But I would tell you, there is nothing amazing about Erica Ingram. I was just someone who had the opportunity, and along with those opportunities, I had people to encourage me to go on, fight, and achieve what I set out to achieve. So are the days going to be easy? No. If you have that village there, you have that support, cadets, if you don't achieve, you have no one to blame but yourself. There are many times, actually more than not, that I'm the only African American or female in the room at senior level leadership meetings. Bory A. Williams, head of the business operations at StubHub North America, said in a Fortune magazine, "Diversity gets people into the room, but inclusion keeps them there." True diversity is about more than just numbers. It must be intentional, about creating and fostering a culture where everyone has a seat at the table, not just entry to the room to watch as a bystander. My translation: seats at the table get a vote, and votes provide the opportunity to change things. We need to remind ourselves every day to include the awareness and emphasize the importance of inclusion and valuing the contributions of all members, past and present. We owe it to ourselves and those who will follow in our footsteps to learn about those who made history, who served against all odds, all too often in ratings far below their skill level, and who laid the foundation for us to be where we are today. For example, Mary Bowser served as a trusted servant in the Confederate White House, but she was actually enlisted as a black spy for the Union forces during the Civil War. Her story began with servitude and ended with gratitude. Deeming her as an ignorant housekeeper, no precautions were ever taken in safeguarding or securing information while around her. Unlike most people of color during this time, she could actually read and write, so she easily journaled information to pass on to the Union forces. I think the most valuable lesson learned here is never discount someone's value because of how society perceives their worth, your generalized bias, and sometimes outdated assumptions. This literally aided in shaping Civil War strategies. We must provide examples daily to look up to and emulate. Our daily actions mean so much more for the future than we think. What we do within each day, how we act, react, our values and opinions, you never know how those small things that you do will affect those around you for generations to come. I implore you as individuals to be change agents. Seize available opportunities to create your personal success or assist others in providing a pathway for them. Take full advantage of all the opportunities and exercise all the rights others fought so hard for. Regardless of your current position, I challenge you to perform a personal analysis and determine what actions have you taken to either promote or hinder advancement and opportunities for all. Find your personal passion, your voice, and make your vote count, whether it's in an election, the boardroom, committee room, or voting in an investment for our youth. Cadets, step into your destiny of greatness, and remember, you get to define your greatness, not society. No matter where we come from or what we look like, we all have worth and value. The future of our nation is definitely at stake. I think the ultimate end state for all should be to mentor and showcase to others that something is achievable, despite there not currently being a reflection of you in that position or in a seat at the decision table. Hence, resilience and perseverance for the greater good. Cadets, a few things I sometimes have to remind myself. Happiness is not a constant permanent state. Wholeness is. Don't confuse the two. Can't is a cop-out. Hold your heroes to high standards. Be your own hero. Stay true to yourself always. Practice your passions. Ask for what you want. The worst thing they can say is no. Always remember, you are amazing. Don't let anyone ever make you feel you are not. You are enough. Wish on the stars and then work hard to make them happen. In conclusion, I'd like to leave you with a quote by Brian Tracy. Make your life a masterpiece with no limitations on what you can do, can have, or dream you can be.
To those young people who are being trained today to continue the legacy of Dr. Crenchaw and others in the field of aviation and aerospace, congratulations. I'd also like to present an article that is now 80 years old. It came out November 18th, 1939, and it talks about the 66 air-minded students who would go on to earn their civilian pilot's license. Among those students, Milton P. Crenchaw. We also have a book that features the Tuskegee Airmen of Arkansas, which includes Dr. Crenchaw, the first Black to earn his civilian pilot's license in the United States of America from Arkansas. Also featured the 1995 HBO poster that brought and highlighted the Tuskegee Airmen. Dr. Crenchaw was a civilian pilot instructor. He taught the men to fly. And without people like Dr. Crenchaw, the program itself might never have been a success. In 2007, the Tuskegee Airmen, the pilots, the ground crew, which included men, women, Black, and white, were honored with the Congressional Gold Medal. The Congressional Gold Medal is the highest civilian honor given to Americans. This photo features many of the Tuskegee Airmen who attended the ceremony in Washington, D.C. in 2007. Last but not least, a poster from the Red Tails movie that came out in 2012, Lucasfilm Red Tails. In that movie, which highlighted the Tuskegee Airmen in combat overseas, they talked about them as bomber escorts. The Tuskegee Airmen would fly 4 types of aircraft: a P-39, P-40, P-47, and P-51. And they would escort the bombers, B-17s and B-24s. So it is indeed an honor to speak to you on behalf of Dr. Crenchaw, whom I met in August of 2015.
A very special thank you to Datamax and Mosaic Templars, our presenting sponsors this evening. Mr. Danny White of Joyce James Agency, also a videographer and technology specialist extraordinaire. Laura Iverson of LEI Venture Company, Goddess Products Incorporated, Reverend Leroy James, Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport, and Southwest Airlines, for allowing MPCATA to campaign the Dr. Milton P. Crenchaw exhibit on site. The MPCATA Advisory Council, in-kind monetary donors, and the amazing volunteers who came through to help make this special. Now, ladies and gentlemen, would you please give all of our sponsors a warm round of applause.
Lou was involved in major events. In 2005, he headed the flight team and supported Rosa Parks' homegoing celebration. His team piloted Rosa Parks' remains, family and friends on her farewell tour. He then represented Southwest Airlines at the Rosa Parks bill signing ceremony conducted by President George W. Bush, and also in the 2006 NAACP National Convention. Lou was represented Southwest Airlines at the Tuskegee Airmen Congressional Gold Medal ceremonies. My friend Lou Freeman.
These long trips that we used to take as kids, I never understood why we loaded up the car early in the morning and we took off and we only stopped for gas. I never understood why we had to eat in the car, and except for gas, and if you need to go to the bathroom, you better schedule it during your gas stops, because otherwise there was no stopping. Never understood at that particular time why we did that. And it was one of these numbers where, are we there yet? Are we there yet? I know now why. The reason being was at that particular time in the late 50s, early 60s, we couldn't go everywhere we wanted to go, and we couldn't stop anywhere we wanted to stop. I know you guys saw the movie probably, The Green Book. It was for real. It was absolutely for real. But as a kid, you had no clue what was going on. you're just like, why? Well, every February, I do the same thing. I go back through and say, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Dr. King gave us the barometer. He told us what we should be looking for. You know, we're supposed to be able to sit down, the kids of slaves sitting down with the kids of slave owners at the table of life. And we're supposed to be able to be equals, and you're supposed to be judged by the content of your character, not by the color of your skin. And you know what? Actually, tomorrow would be my 39th anniversary getting hired by Southwest Airlines. And we are still not there yet. Now, I know that back then I happened to be the first, and it wasn't because I was so grand or so great or so wonderful. It was because I flew a 737 in the Air Force with a bunch of guys that happened to like me, and they were the ones that wrote the letter that I call my We Love Lou letter. Because one guy wrote a letter, it only had a few lines in it, but he had all the rest of the guys I had been in the Air Force with sign that letter. And when I went to go do my interview, I'm waiting on the interview to start, and it was already over. I had had my interview the years that I was flying out in California, when I was flying with those guys, because when I got ready, I'm sitting there, and the other flight manager comes in, and he introduces me to him and says, this is Lou. He's going to be in our next class. And I'm like, I thought I was here for an interview. He pulls out that letter and says, if these guys want you, we want you, because these guys could blackball you. So the lesson I learned from that was every day is an interview. Every day you better bring your A game. Every day you better show up and be there and be the kind of person that everybody wants to be. And you know what? The funny thing about it is the guy that wrote my letter was the last guy in the world that I would have had write my letter, because he was one of the captains that I used as my example of how not to be. But he happened to hear my voice when I was trucking across the skies after Mount St. Helens had exploded in May of 1980. And he recognized my voice, and he says, Lou, is that you? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, this is John. When you coming down? And I'm like, well, I get out in August and stuff. And he said, well, I'll sponsor you. And at the time, Southwest was nepotism big time. Basically, if you didn't know somebody, you didn't get in the door. Simple as that. And so when he volunteered to write my letter, I was like, oh, God, I don't want John to write it. Because I knew his reputation where we were. But you can't say no, so I said yes. And he wrote me an outstanding letter that actually I still have to be there in the right place at the right time. That was the reason I was the first black pilot at Southwest. Now, the reason I became the first black chief pilot is because I worked my butt off. I enjoyed working for Southwest, and I enjoyed my job, and I enjoyed the people I worked with, and I would put in the extra time. And when the job came open in Chicago, we were opening up a new crew base, I was already an assistant chief pilot in Phoenix, and I was perfectly happy being in Phoenix. I was not the kind of guy that liked going out in the cold weather and stuff, because I never bid cold weather stations. I mean, in the wintertime, the last winter I was actually on the line, I didn't even fly east of El Paso, because I'm like, they don't pay me anymore to do cold weather. So when they wanted me and they twisted my arm, they even called my wife and says, hey, look, can you get Lou to take this job? When they got me to do that, I said, okay, I'll do it for 2 years, and then I'll come back to Phoenix. and I got them to promise me that they were gonna pay my way back to Phoenix. Well, that was in 1992, and I'm still not back in Phoenix. But I enjoyed the job in Chicago so much that I stayed there, and I stayed chief pilot for over 15 years. And I loved every minute of the job because it was a challenging job. It was a chess match. Every day you came to work and you had to use creative thinking in order to solve problems, and I loved that. I did that. And even then, I would do what I could, like Andre said. My goal was to not only open the door, but to hold the door open to get more people of color into that door. And believe it or not, we are there right now. Back when I got hired in 1980, airlines were barely hiring, and I was fortunate to get hired when I did. But now, the airlines are short on pilots. Andre was talking about United Airlines. In the next 10 years, United Airlines is going to hire 10,000 pilots just to replace the pilots that they're losing now. The regional carriers don't have enough pilots that are going to be able to fill the bill because the major airlines steal from the regionals because the military has gotten so they'd rather fly a drone than to fly a manned airplane, and they're just not producing as many pilots. So what used to be like a 80-20 mix with military and civilian kind of eased down to a 60-40, and now the military is on the wrong end of that scale, or if you're civilian, you think it's on the right end of the scale, but they are on the lower end of the scale, so they're looking for pilots everywhere. They're looking for people that are qualified, and they're looking for people that are motivated. And we have an opportunity right now to make sure that we provide them with the product that they're looking for. And that's what the MPCATA is doing, providing it's the beginning level product, but everybody starts somewhere. Like Andre said, you have to start with that first flight. And we have an opportunity to put people that would normally never think of being an airline pilot because of the different obstacles that are in the way, the cost. If you go civilian, like Andre said, it's between $80,000 and $100,000. Who's got that kind of money? Who's got a rich uncle that says, oh yeah, no problem, I'll write you a check? No, we just don't have those kind of uncles sitting around, okay? So we as a group need to do this ourselves for our kids. We need to find our kids ways to get the entry-level qualifications that they're going to need to be able to move on and progress and be the airline pilots of the future. And that's what MPCATA is doing right now. And it's up to all of us because we can see where we are now and we can see where we're going. And now that you know the numbers, they're going to be hiring 600,000 pilots. Now is the time for us to get our share. Now is the time for us to have our people in the place, okay? Because they won't be able to discriminate because they need everybody that's qualified. So if there was ever a time, if you think about it, back in the Revolutionary War, when they ran short of white soldiers, what did they do? They went and grabbed a bunch of slaves and they made them promises and they enlisted them into the services. They did the same thing in the Civil War. Well, now's the time they're doing it in the airline business. And the airline business can be very lucrative. So if you want our kids to get a piece of that action, now's the time to start contributing. Nobody has mentioned it all night long, but did you notice that there are pledge cards at each one of the tables? You need to be filling those out. I got mine. I filled it out, and I wrote a check with it too. Okay? We would love for a few more people to fill out a few more of those cards because we need it. When you take an organization like this that's been around for 10 years, it's got staying power. It shows that it's a proven commodity. When you take a look at Dr. Crenchaw, that spent his whole life trying to teach us to fly airplanes and trying to educate us, now is the time for us to really make his dream come true. And it's incumbent on us. It's incumbent on those of us that can see and know that it's time for us to make it happen. And the way you make it happen is to participate. You participate financially, and then we get people to participate, like the Colonel said, in the boardroom. If you have people sitting at the table when the decisions are being made, who to hire and who not to hire, guess what? The numbers seem to change. I spent a little bit of time sitting at that table fighting for pilots of color that were being discriminated against for all kinds of odd reasons. And I mean, odd reasons. And they were just, because they didn't have the real story behind these guys, they would basically make up their own stories as to why things had happened in their career. I was fortunate enough to have the tentacles out there in the black aviation community that I could make a call and I could find out. And I could tell them, no. It might look like that, but the real deal is this. And that's what we need. We need people that are the right color, sitting at the table, doing the right thing. Just because you're there does not mean that you're going to do the right thing. You've got to be there and be with us 100% and not be afraid that, oh, I can't speak up. The way I saw it, if they fired me from being a chief pilot, it would just mean I went back on the line and have the best airline job in the world. So I had nothing to lose. And that's why I was as proactive as I was. But I couldn't get anybody to come behind me because the guys weren't willing to make the sacrifice. Like I said, we had the best airline job in the business with all kinds of flexibility and making all kinds of money. But when you came into the office, you gave up a lot of that flexibility and you actually gave up some of that money. Even though the money I made was still good enough to send my kids to some of the best schools in the country, they weren't willing to do that. They would always say, "We got your back, Lou, we got your back." Well, they rode my back for a long time. The sad thing was, in that whole 15 years, actually 18 years total, I couldn't get our people to come in and help me and to replace me. They didn't want to do it. They just didn't want to make the sacrifice. They thought that Lou was going to be there forever. No, Lou loves you, but Lou wasn't going to give up his last few years of flying in order to be able to save you like that. And that was just what I decided to do at the time. But now, like I said, the opportunity is here. The doors are open, and they're grabbing anybody that's qualified. We need to make sure that we do as much as we can to make our kids qualified. Wouldn't you like for the legacy of Dr. Crenchaw to be a whole bunch of airline pilots coming from Little Rock, Arkansas? and it's going to be incumbent on not just you, like I said, me too, because I learned one thing about being a leader: you don't ask your troops to do anything that you don't do. That's the best way to be a leader. When you're leading from the rear and say, you go do this and tell me about it when you get back, guess what? They might not even bother to go over there and do that, and they might not even bother to come back. So the best way to be a leader is to lead from the front.
I'm very excited to get the opportunity to introduce this next gentleman, and I think you will be very moved and impressed after hearing from him, but first I want you to hear about him. Thomas Franklin Vaughns, born and raised in a small family farm, I should say, in Lee County near Marianna, with his parents and 5 siblings. After having completed the 11th grade at Robert R. Morton High School in Marianna, following summer employment in Illinois, he was drafted into World War II in 1942. He was one of 18 veterans of about 400 in his squadron who was selected to train as a Tuskegee airman. He received his training certificate as a flight mechanic, which prepared him to make necessary repairs and test the safety of B-52 bomber airplanes for training. Following an honorable discharge from World War II in 1946, he enrolled in an accelerated program at Washington Tech High School in St. Louis and earned his high school diploma within 3 months. From there, he went to where many outstanding graduates attended, AM&N in Pine Bluff. Determined to complete his college education after continuous year-round enrollment, he earned the Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Education in 3.5 years, ladies and gentlemen. Although he completed his degree in 1949, he graduated with the class of 1950. He did graduate work at Michigan State University, Lansing, and at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. He began his professional career in Marianna teaching veterans the latest farm management techniques. After an honorable discharge from the Korean conflict, he began employment in 1952 as a county extension agent with the Cooperative Extension Service in Crittenden County. While residing in West Memphis, he found time for community work outside his regular employment. He was a key organizer of the West Memphis Council of Organizations designed to obtain social and economic equality for African American residents in an area during the peak years of the civil rights movement. The needs of youth were also a priority, as he mentored youth through the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and was the founding president of the Wonder City Boys Club that provided much-needed recreational activities for African American youth. Although he retired in 1986, he has remained actively engaged in his community by serving on various advisory boards, such as Habitat for Humanity, and has mentored youth with the Arkansas Land and Farm Development, Leader, Delta Service Corps, and Alpha Phi Alpha, his fraternity of more than 60 years, to name a few. He and his wife, Luveda, celebrated nearly 51 years of marriage before her passing in 2001. He is the father of 3 loving adult children and 1 loving adult grandson. Currently residing in Whitehall, he and his family celebrated, this is really impressive, his 99th birthday in July of this year. He continues to harvest a small garden, enjoys fishing derbies, and loves spending quality time with family and friends. Considers himself to be blessed, and he says he feels that he has accomplished his life's mission as a servant of the people. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you're going to stand up and give him a nice round of applause, Mr. Thomas Franklin Vaughns.
Do I have any Baptist people in the church, in the audience? If so, I just say amen. And I'd like to see the young lady that was looking for someone. being 99 years of age, I need someone to wheel me around in the chair. I'm deeply honored to have the opportunity to just help celebrate the life of Dr. Milton Crenchaw. Two things I want the young people to remember tonight, if you don't remember anything else. Number one, set your goal. Number two, I know you know about running a relay race. You pass a baton, you know, go to the finish line. All right. So therefore, I'm telling the young people this. Set your goal early as possible and ask for guidance and so forth in setting that goal. And I remember setting a goal when I was about 11 years old. I want to be a county agent. And so therefore, I didn't know anything about being a county agent. So I asked the county agent, I said, what must I do to be a county agent? He was driving around in a car. And my transportation was horseback riding, a buggy, and a wagon on foot. And he didn't have to pick cotton and chop cotton or anything like that. And all the thing he said, you have to be prepared. And so he said, and my goal was to be like him, driving a car and don't do anything, just talk to people and make a living. But I wanted to say something about United States Army. What happened when I was drafted, everyone was wondering what was going on. I was a baker at the headquarters in the Army. And so therefore, the chef said, drop whatever you're doing, report to your headquarters. And I was wondering what was going on. You never know in the Army. You just take orders. Went there, and there was about 18 other gentlemen there. And he said, oh, we wondered, so what's going on? We asked the first sergeant. He said, you people have been selected, you're 18 people out of 400 and something, to be airplane mechanics. And the Tuskegee airmen will come by to train you. They'll be here in about 3 days. Sure enough, they showed up. And we went to school. I'm going to shorten this as much as I can. We went to school for about 60 days. They had a book about a foot thick that we went through. And the main things about making sure we knew about the safety of the aircraft. And so after we finished the training, our job was to make sure that everything was working perfectly. We changed the tires every 25 or 30 landings. And if the plane had not been flown overnight, the next day, the crew chief would say, all right, you got to turn the propeller over 3 times and on each engine. And so we said, why is that? So the oil will run down to the oil pan. And if you started the airplane, it'll burst the cylinder, and you had to put another engine on the airplane. So therefore, you had to have all of these safety measures to be sure the aircraft was safe. And we had to have inspection every 25 hours, of flying time every 50 hours, 75 hours, and then when it gets 600 flying hours, then that is considered on the Red Cross, and therefore it could not be flown. We had to change the engines, had to go to the hangar, change the engines, and therefore that meant that the aircraft was safe to fly again. So I'm telling you young people to if this is directed to them, make sure the goal in life you plan to run. You heard of a relay team, haven't you? And you have what we call a baton. And so, and then another thing, you have to set a goal in life. And then when you're running with a baton, if it's not in life, well, you just watch and see what really happened. The spectators are looking, see how you're going to come out. If you drop the baton, then you'll probably never be remembered anymore because you've lost the race. But I tell you, the race of life is different. You can drop the baton, and then you pick it up. Yes, sir. And this is what I did during my lifetime. I was born and reared on a family farm of my great-grandfather that was a slave during the time of the Revolution took place. And then I went to went to a grade school. Going to a grade school where one teacher taught 4 grades. One teacher taught 4 grades. And so therefore, you can imagine what kind of education we have. And then we had the books that the white people had used, and the backs off, and they'd given us those books for us to read. And so the teacher had to have strict orders in order that she may be able to do what she was supposed to do. And one big boy was thumping Sheeran's head. So the teacher looked around and said, "Pamela," he said, "you behave yourself." And she didn't say anything else. We had a long seat. She was talking to us. Then she said, "All right, you might be dismissed." And she went over to give Pamela liquid a strap. And he jerked the strap. And she gave him an uppercut. She weighed about 250 pounds. And knocked him out cold, about 2 seats in the front of me. We thought he was dead. So someone ran into the next room and told the other teacher to come in and see what's going on there. And she said, "Well, get a cold towel and put on it in his face." And they put the cold towel on his face. Then he stood up and he looked around. He didn't know what had happened. And so the teacher thought she had killed him. So what she said, "I didn't hit him, did I?" So I said within myself, "Well, lightning must have struck him there." Now, my goal was to be a county agent. And I talked to my county agent. He said, "Oh, you have to finish high school." I was about 11 years old. You have to finish high school, and after finish high school, then you have to go to college. And you have to do all these things in order to be a county agent. And that stayed on my mind. That was my goal. And I was interrupted by going into the Army. And when I got out, well, I tried to continue to do what I was doing. And finally, after I finished college and all, and then I decided I wanted to go on to carry out my duties as a county agent. Made the application, and they said, "Oh yeah, the credentials are good." So the only thing you need to do is get one more letter of recommendation. I said, "Well, I've had 3. How many more do I need?" You had to have one more. It has to be from a white man. Therefore, I was teaching and training 2,000 farmers, 1,000 4-Hers, but I had to add a letter from the white man. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not there yet. And so, and we appreciate the support of those that support moving, looking at people as people rather than looking at people at different colors. So it ended up, I had the opportunity to hire both black and white when I was at the university. Ladies and gentlemen, to the young folks, take your goals in order to follow your living life. You got to have these goals. I had to walk to high school 3.5 miles for 3 years, rain, sleet, or snow, or what. And therefore, the baton they gave to me was from the United States Army when they did GI Bill of Rights. And so that's what carried me in order to get my goal. I picked up, as I said, you could drop your baton, you can pick it up again. After I was interrupted in the war, and I picked it up, then I came out, I ended up going back to in the Korean War, and I had to pick my baton up again. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell young people, just keep your goal in mind, and if you're interrupted and drop the baton, pick it up and continue to go forward. Another thing that, coming back to the Tuskegee airman business, a lot of people thought everybody was, when you said Tuskegee airmen, they thought they was all trained at Tuskegee. What happened during wartime, what was happening, they had a contract with the predominantly black universities, and people were selected from different bases and have training there. And on the base I was at, 5 people from Tuskegee came and trained us, and we were considered as Tuskegee airmen, just like those that was trained on the base. So, but one other thing I'd like to mention, and I thank all the young ladies, and especially would be glad to hear this. In Memphis, Tennessee, FedEx, at our annual meeting, decided to sponsor, they sponsored Tuskegee annual meeting. We had about 4,000 people at that meeting. They even had the aircraft there from Tuskegee and so forth. And as I said, passing the baton, the Tuskegee Airmen passed the baton to those that wanted to be flyers. And so, so some young ladies and gentlemen were there. 5 young ladies was honored at that day, and they only had, they only had so many out of the group that they had. And when they're being honored as pilots, flying for FedEx, that was about 10 years ago. And one little lady, I guess she weighed about 115 to 20 pounds, with the high heels on, went up to receive an award and everything. After everything was over, I had an opportunity to talk with one of the persons. I said, "Now, what kind of aircraft did you fly?" She said, "Well, a tanker." I said, "What you mean by a tanker?" She said, "When the aircraft FedEx or any other place would go fly a plane to different parts of the world, I would be based at a certain place where I could take off, intercept, and fuel the aircraft while it's flying. And that was fascinating. And so young people, you have an opportunity to do a lot of things now. But one thing you have to watch out, think about your health, think about smoking, think about doping, think about all of these things that will deter you from reaching your goal. Always keep your goal in mind and continue to work forward to that goal. And this is what Dr. Crenchaw did. I had an opportunity to talk with him. He said they had a person on the base called Chief Anderson. And Chief Anderson, he said, borrowed $2,500 to buy a plane, taught himself to fly. And therefore he headed up the Tuskegee flying service. And so he was close to him, and so Miss Roosevelt, Miss Eleanor Roosevelt came down to see what was going on at Tuskegee. And and so the civil, and she wanted to take a flight. And so she had a little problem. The people that was protecting her questioned her for a while, and finally they let her fly up. And then as she took the seat in the aircraft, do you know who buckled the seat? Crenchaw. Buckled Miss Roosevelt's seat into the aircraft. That's what he told me. And so I believe what he said. I had a little young lady, about 10 years old. I think she was 10. She might have been younger. From Florida that I got a letter from the other day. And she wanted to know if I knew Miss Roosevelt. Did I get a chance to see her? Did I know President Roosevelt? Did I get a chance to see them? And I wrote her back, and I sent her a picture of guess who? Of Crenchaw. And told her I didn't see him, but my friend did see him. And this is his picture. He buckled Miss Roosevelt in the seat for a 40-minute flight. And so it's really an honor to have known Brother Crenchaw. He was a religious person and all, and he did so many things as he motivated young people to be airplane mechanics, airplane pilots, just as these young people has told you tonight. And so anything I have to say, it would be that set your goal, stay with your goal, and pass the baton to those that come behind.
Citation, Milton P. Crenchaw, Aviation Training Academy, Centennial Decade Honors. Whereas Dr. Milton P. Crenchaw believed that proper education and exposure to the world of aviation will ensure our youth the ability to attain careers in the fields of aerospace, aeroscience, and aeronautics. And the Milton P. Crenchaw Aviation Training Academy honors his legacy by believing that no child should forego their dream in these fields of study due to lack of financial support. And whereas Dr. Crenchaw was a remarkable Arkansan who was born in 1919 and would have celebrated his 100th birthday this year. He was one of the first African Americans in the country and the first Arkansan to be successfully trained by the federal government as a civilian licensed pilot. and is nationally recognized for his role as an instructional aviator and pilot trainer and Tuskegee Airman. And whereas MPCATA was founded in 2009 and works to identify and mentor students in underserved and disadvantaged communities in order to provide access to educational opportunities related to the aviation and aerospace industries. And whereas Dr. Crenchaw left a lasting legacy for others to emulate with his multitude of accomplishments and significant impacts on the field of aviation during his long and distinguished career, and MPCATA honors him by helping young people pursue aviation careers. And whereas the House of Representatives of the 92nd General Assembly of the state of Arkansas takes great pride in honoring the life of Dr. Milton P. Crenchaw and recognizing the 10-year anniversary of the Milton P. Crenchaw Aviation Training Academy. Now, therefore, pursuant to the motion of Representatives Jamie Scott and Frederick Love, the Arkansas House of Representatives directs that this citation be presented on this 9th day of November, 2019. Jamie Scott, Representative; Frederick Love, Representative, Speaker of the House. I also have proclamations from the county, Pulaski County, Arkansas, and the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. Thank you.
I certainly hope that you guys have enjoyed everything that the Advisory Council has spearheaded in putting this together with the support of the board for the Milton P. Crenchaw Aviation Training Academy. Have you had a good time? Yes. All right. So I wanted to introduce myself. I am Tammy East, Program and Special Event Coordinator for Milton P. Crenchaw. I have been aboard on this team since 2012. I wanted to reiterate, which is in our program, our mission to provide young people an opportunity to pursue aviation and aerospace careers, our vision to be the leader of providing services in the state of Arkansas, preparing young people for aviation and aerospace careers. MPCATA has partnered with the Little Rock School District. We first started introducing MPCATA to Cloverdale and the Forest Heights STEM Academy in 2015. And then we started our ACE Academy program in 2016. ACE Academy stands for Aviation Career Education. It's a one-week program focusing on exposing and educating middle and high school students to aviation. This year, coming in 2020, will be our third program. Most programs focus on STEM. Everyone knows what STEM is: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. MPCATA focuses on those same goals, except we put in ESTEAM, which stands for we work on their self-esteem, making sure that they are confident when they get into the positions to maintain the positions and move forward. We also work on their, let me say this. MPCATA was the first ACE Academy that has been approved by the FAA in the state of Arkansas. So we're very proud of that. ACE Academy, when your student comes to our academy, they learn leadership, training, flight training, aviation history, aircraft and design, maintenance, and so much more. Okay. MPCATA takes cadets on field trips to aviation sites within the community. We can't do it alone. Our partners are, as you see, the Mosaic Templars. They house the actual one-week program that we have. Central Flying Service, United States Air Force Base out of Little Rock, which is in Jacksonville, very confusing. Civil Air Patrol, and the Bill and Hillary Clinton Airport. Now I need you guys to keep a secret. Don't y'all tell Southwest. But Delta sponsors a dream flight for our cadets, where they take our cadets. We have the cadets in the program. They have to qualify to earn the position to go on the Delta Dream Flight. Delta sponsors a program where they take our students to an educational aviation facility. I'm not sure if you guys have ever had the opportunity to have an airline to be an Uber for you, but that's what it's like. They fly directly from Little Rock to Atlanta, from Atlanta to the location, from the location back to Atlanta, and then back to Little Rock. So it is a 3-day fast-paced, but very exhilarating, very exciting for the students program that Delta provides, which Andre Slay, our earlier speaker, is on that team, and we certainly appreciate them. MPCATA has also sent 14 students to the National Flight Academy, where they have the state-of-the-art programs where they learn about aviation and different programs. They go through actual physical activities there. They're on different teams. They learn various aviation activities and programs there. It's very vigorous, very, very on spot. They're very strict. They have to get up at a certain time. They have to go to bed at a certain time. It's really a real life experience for the student to decide if aviation is going to be for them. I also wanted to acknowledge our, we had some other students that were here, some other cadets, but I would like for Amir and Ahmad Mitchell to stand. And we would like to give them a hand clap just for coming. As you all know, being a cadet is not alone. We wouldn't be remiss to not acknowledge his mom. Mom, would you please stand? Miss Angelita Thomas. She's the one that gets the cadets here to all of our programs. She has been very supportive, and we appreciate that. We had some other cadets here, but they had to leave. And others that planned to attend, but due to things that come up, they could not attend, but wish us well with our program. I wanted to acknowledge that board member Seth Lake took time out of his schedule to teach Grant Holiday, which you'll see in your program. If you take a minute and look through your program, you'll see the very heartfelt note that he wrote to MPCATA expressing what he learned and how he feels and how it has sent him on to a new path. He is going to be a pilot. It says in the book that he was scheduled to go into the Marines in December, but he actually got called in October. He was supposed to be here, but he got called in, and so he is now on his way to the Marines and his end goal is to be a pilot. We also have another student who Mr. Major Seth Lake has mentored, and her name is Kiera Bates. She goes to Henderson State University, and Major Seth Lake took time out of his schedule, his gas, his plane, to mentor these students. This is the type of dedication we have from our board, and we just appreciate them so much for their support. Now, one thing about MPCATA, we're not cheap. Sorry, but it ain't cheap. It's no other way to put it. So you want to know, how can I get involved? How can my student experience what you all have to offer? They can become a cadet. On your table, you will see we have a few flyers that announce our dates for the ACE Academy. We have the Save the Date at the ACE Academy here, which is going to be held at the Mosaic Templars, June 8th through June 12th. So listen out for that. If you have no children, but you still want to get involved, you can sponsor a cadet for only $50. For a person to become a cadet in the ACE Academy, they have to be 13 to 17 years old, have a 3.0 grade point average, and the number is on the card for you to call, 501-492-9019. Call MPCATA, and I promise you we will get them going in the right direction. But I definitely want you to stay in tune with MPCATA. We have a lot of great things coming up in 2020, and we certainly hope to influence more cadets into our programs and get more pilots, engineers, whatever career that they decide to go into aviation. Thank you.
So I just want to take the time to thank a few of our partners. Datamax, thank you very much. They are responsible for these beautiful programs that we have. And thank you very much, Datamax. And Mr. Keith Popcorn, have you guys noticed that on the table? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Keith. Mr. Keith. And also, Also, Mosaic Templars, thank you very much for your having us here in this beautiful auditorium. So thank you all.
Please welcome again Dr. Wright.
Thank you so much. The first award we would like to give is the Milton Crenchaw Lifetime Achievement Award. And that is given to a person of renown who has demonstrated a lifetime of commitment to aviation to make it better for others, such as the great Tuskegee Airman. And that is no other than Sergeant First Class Thomas Vaughn. Next is the MPCATA Marlin Green Courage in Aviation Award, given to someone who has exemplified courage in the face of adversity while overcoming at great personal cost to achieve their goals during their aviation career. And the recipient of that is no other than the captain himself, Lou Freeman. Okay, our next award is the MPCATA Willie Smith Community Service Award, given to someone who has given of their time and efforts towards MPCATA's mission to help young people pursue aviation and aerospace careers. And that goes to our founding president, Terrence Bolden. He is not here, but his sister, Sharon Johnson, is going to receive it on his behalf. Next is the Milton P. Crenchaw Trailblazer Award. This is given to someone who has exemplified leadership, achieved professional excellence, demonstrated courage, inspired change, and selflessly blazed a path in their prospective field. Colonel Erica Ingram, would you take the stage? And also, we have the Milton Crenchaw Cadet Excellence Award. That's given to a young cadet that has demonstrated leadership excellence in the classroom and community and meeting the requirements of MPCATA. That award goes to Grant Holiday. He is not here, so we'll be making sure we send that to him in California. And last and not least, as far as these awards, is the MPCATA President's Award. This is given to someone on the staff or a volunteer who has went above and on the call of duty to keep the organization in its goals. So Laverne is not here, Laverne Davis, but I looked out, I think I see her handsome son. Come on up here, Will. Laverne Page. There are some special people that I want to quickly recognize. I know time is of the There were people that participated today that didn't get awards. We didn't forget you. Pamela Smith, Officer Tommy Norman, First Officer Andrew Slay, and Zelly Orr. We have a special memoir for the family, but before we get to that, I want to, when I call the board and the advisory members, I would like you to come forward and remain up here for the remaining of everyone I call. Terrence is not here, but if his sister can come up and accept this for him. This is a gift of love from me to the advisory committee and everybody that has the board that has been an integral part of not only the organization, but making this happen. Judge Berlin Jones, Raymond Rogers, Barbara Rice, Sandy Becker, Senator Joyce Elliott, Major Seth Lake, Vern Page. Will, if you can come stand on her behalf. We have Tammy East. I wanted to acknowledge the advisory committee. They did not know I was doing this. But when I tell you, they went beyond the call of duty. I mean, I can't tell you enough how they worked tirelessly. They did not let me down. There wasn't any way I was going to do this program and not acknowledge them. So as I call you all, please come and remain at the stage. The first person I really want to acknowledge is John Lynch. He was the first person. When I had the vision for this 110 event, John was the first person that said, I get it. And I said, would you help me? And the rest is history. John, stay up here. This next young lady, when I tell you, Fanae Wicks, is no joke. She is no joke. She takes care of business. This event would not be what it is if it were not for her. And she kept telling me to hurry up, but she didn't realize she was being recognized. So Fanae, would you come forward? And you all give her an extra hand of applause. The next is Curtis Hall, Will Grafton, Danny White, Laura Iverson. To close, one of the things I would like everybody to think about as you getting ready to give in this campaign, if not us, who? If not now, when? And if not to make a difference, then why? It's nice to be here for the event. It's nice to be here for the dinner. But we want to make sure that what we are doing is continuing to keep the legacy of Dr. Crenchaw alive. So we ask everybody to give what you can, because every bit makes a difference.